Hey everyone, welcome back to The Moment Live. It's your host, Meredith Lynch. I'm joined, as always, by my pal, Rebecca Senenez, which, Rebecca, we're going to do a different episode on this, but I realize it's almost our year anniversary of being friends.
I know. We have to go to the sandwich shop that we originated this partnership at.
Right? But you know what? When we first started thinking and dreaming about this show, we had like a short list of people of like, here are some like really good people that we'd want to have on. And
Yep.
I'm so excited because this was one of the like, even in our first couple meetings, we threw around this name. We're like, we could get
Absolutely.
Francesca Ramsey on. And so I feel like this sort of feels like a pivotal episode of the show because
That's true.
right?
Yeah,
You know her. You've been following her for years. I've been following her for years. I love her book, which I literally was just looking at before I got on here. But we're joined by our guest host, TV writer, actress, producer, and social media consultant, Francesca Ramsey, who the other day I was with Francesca, this is a little while ago, and I introduced her to someone and they go, my mom even knows who you are. And I just feel like
Wow.
it's the highest praise.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's very sweet. It's always very flattering and still kind of surreal that anyone knows who I am. So very happy to be here and super proud of you all for putting this show together. Meredith, it's been so cool watching your journey as you set out to like make things happen. And it's really cool.
Thank
and
you.
also last week's guest, Yesterqueers, Amanda W. Tipson,
Oh, yes, Amanda.
we met at your birthday party. So
Yeah.
part of what's fun about this show is like it really is an all in the family, like who's cool, who's smart, who do we like, who have we met, and let's
Yeah.
have a conversation about what's
I
going
love
on.
that.
Well, there's a lot to talk about on the show. And
For
like,
sure.
this is talk about the stars aligning because
I
today on the
know.
show, we're going to talk about the America's Next Top Model docuseries that has come out. And we could not stop yapping about this before we got on here. So I'm so excited. And it's great because we have Francesca here, and Francesca did a podcast, an audiobook, all of these things around America's Next Top Model. Then we'll unpack the humanitarian crisis in Cuba and why the United States is one of the major forces behind it. And then I can't believe the guest that we have today. We have legendary journalist Soledad O'Brien joining us to talk about her Oscar-nominated documentary that's about a Georgia abortion clinic in a post-Dobbs world. So let's just kick this off because we need to talk about this America's Next Top Model documentary. So it's on Netflix. I was watching it last night. Rebecca, you watched it last night. And it just seems really relevant that we are exposing so much of this early 2000s culture, especially in the light of like all the things that are coming out with the Epstein files. Francesca, I want to kick it to you because you know so much about the body of work that is America's Next Top Model. And so I'd love to hear like, what do you feel like the documentary is getting right? And what do you feel like it's missing?
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of the show. I don't think I watched every season. I think I dropped off before Tyra left the show. But I was a fan, but I often call myself a critical fan. Like I think we can enjoy things, but also acknowledge where things fall short. And I feel very similarly about this docuseries. On the one hand, I think it's really empowering that so many past contestants were able to be given a voice to kind of talk about things that happened behind the scenes that maybe we weren't aware of. But on the other side, I felt like a lot of the players from the show didn't take real responsibility for the ways in which they contributed to some harmful ideals and the ways in which they took advantage of these young women. And that was really disappointing to see. I felt like Tyra especially really straddled the fence where she was very rightfully so proud of the show that she had created and the doors that she opened for young women in the industry. But then at the same time, she was kind of like, I didn't know, I wasn't there, I didn't make those decisions. And I think myself and many others just wanted her to take a little bit more accountability. And I'll include Mr. and Miss J in that. I'll include Ken Mock in that. I think they all kind of needed to actually say, yeah, we made some mistakes. And it didn't feel like they wanted to do that.
Well, let me ask you this, because you have, done so much, did a podcast, et cetera, you know a lot about Tyra. I would imagine.
I don't know a ton about her, but I mean, I interviewed a lot of past contestants. I interviewed casting directors. I interviewed producers on the show, directors on the show. I talked to a lot of people who worked on the show, along with like cultural critics, who fans of the show.
So like, from your perspective, are you surprised, A, that she even did the documentary? And are you surprised that she didn't take like, I mean, she like skirts around responsibility a couple of times. She like sort of flirts with it for a minute and then she pulls back. Did that surprise you?
It didn't surprise me. Full disclosure, Tyra and I have the same agent. And so we tried to get her on the podcast. I sent like a personalized video to our shared agent. And he told me out the gate that she was probably going to say no, that she said no to most things about the show. We did the podcast in 2023 and 2024. So it's been a few years now. So I was not surprised that she was choosing her words very carefully. To Tyra's credit, she is really good. I think talking at the top of her intelligence is what we say, like in comedy and improv. Like she's really good at like piecing things together. But at the same time, I felt like I could see the gears turning in a way that like did not transmute an authenticity. That it was kind of like almost too like, scripted.
Yeah, didn't it feel exactly? It was that she gave the same like faith and like this type of thing that she did on the show when she was delivering like feedback, where she'd be like, "And you just didn't cut it." You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
yes. It was
weird,
very condescending, mentory, not like authentic. Like we're getting a real view of her. But to further answer your question, Meredith, I was not surprised that she kind of had this fake, I guess is the only way to describe it. But like later on in the docuseries, she hints at that top model is returning for another cycle. And once she said that, I was like, okay, well now I know why you did this.
Right, of course you did this. You couldn't come back.
This is damage control.
This is very niche as somebody who's like watched reality TV. I mean, I remember the first time I saw reality TV, I was on vacation with my family and I hit that age where I was like, I don't want to go to the beach. I refuse. I can't be seen with you people. And so I stayed behind at the beach house and I saw the real world for the first time. And I saw Miami and I saw Melissa have a threesome with Mike. And I had no idea that any of these things could happen. But anyway, one of the things that I thought of when I watched this show is, you guys don't judge me. I have a really hot take. Doing reality back then, you just went back to your town and you went back to your life. And that's
not a hot take at all. That's real.
Now, I would say like it is a little better if you go and do Love Island, you can go get an agent and then you can go do traders and then and not that it's great. And I'm not saying that these people don't get exploited, but I will say like it is a little bit better now. And
you can capitalize on a reality TV appearance today in the way that you could not before, because when you go on reality TV now, your Instagram is blowing up while you are on that show and you get off and you have 1 million subscribers, you're getting brand deals, you're going and doing club appearances, you are, maybe doing a merch drop, you're coming out with a song. That's not what it was 20 years ago. You got off the show and you just went back to your normal life. So Meredith, I agree with you. It's not necessarily that it's better, because we still see people exploited on reality TV. And I think the bigger conversation is, how sad is it that we are still in a place where these shows offer to change your life with, $100,000 and people are willing to throw caution to the wind and sign up for something that is exploitative, but because they just need the money, they need that opportunity. They're feeling like this is the last shot that they have. And so of course people are being taken advantage of for that reason.
I feel like part of what they were setting up too with America's Next Top Model that made it that much more insidious is that these girls, young women, were being promised a career at the end of it. It's not like Real World where they were just going home. It's like they were competing because they were like, it is my dream to be a model. And at the end, I'm going to get this thing. And as we saw with Danielle, she was like, that simply was not the case. In fact, it worked against me. And I feel like that was something that was also different. Like now that happens more, but I guess like
it doesn't happen the same. I mean, look at how, Meredith, you and I have seen this happen many a times. TikTokers are getting signed to agents and getting put into movies. Like that was really, people were not looking, especially in the fashion industry. That was something that we talked about a lot on the podcast, is the fashion industry is very closed off. They don't want normies to be a part of it. It's really about people who already have money, who already have connections. It's very exclusive. And so the idea that you could be on a reality show and then get into the world of fashion was really seen as taboo. And that's why they were being cut off from it. Today, we are in a place where, magazines, traditional media is like, we need social media if we are going to thrive and continue. So like we have to maybe begrudgingly open our doors to internet celebrities and reality TV folks, but they see the payoff. And 20 years ago, again, they talked about how no one wanted to even make America's Next Top Model. People did not want to make reality shows. It was really seen as lowbrow. And so now, you can do a reality show and become a successful actor or fashion model.
When I was watching it, part of what I was thinking about is like, how sad is it that now, 15, 20 years later, when we look at our models, really like the biggest models are all Nepo babies. They're all
influencers
and influencers, but like, they're not like, it's not like we have this world where it's like, it's opened up very democratically. Like when I think of models, I think Hailey Bieber, I think Kendall Jenner, I think Kaya Gerber. Those are all people that were born into Hollywood royalty and money. And then from a young age got like pushed up into this world. It's not like, like even these top models, like the ones that I can name are all still from like a specific class and group of people. It's not like this problem.
I think very similarly to Hollywood, though, part of that is because these are not industries that are equitable. Right. A lot of people who are working models will tell you that they're not making a ton of money, that they're actually losing money because you have to sometimes fly yourself to another country, put yourself up in a model apartment where you're sleeping in an apartment with 10 other girls. That was really eye-opening for me in the entertainment industry, where I realized, this is why Nepo babies are able to thrive, because you book a guest star role on a show and you're like, this is only a few $1,000s. And then I have to cut my agents and my lawyers and my taxes. And now it's not even that much money. And there's so much free work, you're going on go-sees and test shoots and you're doing all this stuff in hopes of getting a job, and you're not being paid. So
and it puts you into a vulnerable position. Like I can't even imagine what these girls, like this is a whole other topic, but like this is where predators like Epstein and the people around him can come in and say like, hey, beautiful young girl who has dreams, but no money and no agency and is terrified and has no sort of sense of self. I'll, pick you up and, it's just such a vulnerable place.
Or is here from another country. A lot of models get scouted and brought to the US or brought to Europe in order to work for these high profile fashion weeks. And you're absolutely right, Rebecca. Unfortunately, there are a lot of dangerous and predatory people who know where to go and know how to target vulnerable young people. And it's unfortunate that we are having this moment collectively where we're recognizing this, but my hope is that it makes us smarter and more empathetic. I feel like the conversations around, well, I would have been smarter and that could have never happened to me. And like, I'm just so tired of people using those hindsight glasses instead of actually saying like, you don't know how you would act in those positions. And especially if you don't have community or familiar support or economic support, it is a lot easier to be taken advantage of.
I have a point that I really want to make about this at the end of the show because something clicked in my brain about this, but let's do this after because I really want to quickly move on to our next story before we bring in Soledad because, a couple of things. One, this morning we woke up and Reverend Jesse Jackson, a civil rights activist, leader, and politician passed away. He was the first Black man to mount like a major presidential campaign in the 1980s. And as it turned out, while we were doing some quick looking around this morning, he was a huge advocate for Cuba which is our next story, and was one of 2 Americans to actually speak at Fidel Castro's funeral several years ago. And the reason that we wanted to bring that up is Cuba's in a huge humanitarian crisis that I just don't think is getting enough attention. And so I wanted to talk about it here. So daily life is being disrupted there because effectively oil has stopped going into the country. This started mostly back when the United States invaded Venezuela, because Venezuela had a lot of military exchanges with Cuba and were bringing them oil. And then once the United States came in, that stopped. And on top of it, the United States took that opportunity to put sanctions on other countries in the region, like Mexico, from bringing oil to Cuba. And Cuba is like this very complicated place and has been under sanctions from the US. But at this point, it's like, weeks, if not days away from running out of oil to run their society. Like I'm seeing pictures, there's garbage all over the street because the trucks aren't going through. Water trucks aren't going through. The government is starting to seize generators to go into the hospitals. And I just want to play a clip of Donald Trump talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and then talk about like why the US is doing this on the other side.
Well, it doesn't have to be humanitarian crisis. I think they probably would come to us and want to make a deal. So Cuba would be free again. They'll come to us, they'll make a deal, but Cuba really, they've got a problem. They have a problem. I know so many people from Cuba, but we have a lot of people in the United States right now that would love to go back to Cuba, and we'd like to work that out.
What do you want to see from Cuba? I mean, what do you need to see?
Well, we'll work a deal. I think we're going to work a deal with Cuba. I think,
So on top of it, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is Cuban American. His parents fled the communist regime. And I know there's a lot of like different feelings about Cuba with the Cuban American community. I spent some time living in Cuba, so I have like a lot of love for the complicated country. But so the debate now is sort of like, is the US choking out Cuba in order to like come in and topple the regime? Is it, like, what is our responsibility here? And I just feel like it's like one of those stories that's gone like way by the wayside, but that we actually have a lot of control over.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we are being barraged with news info so that certain stories get buried and we don't have the mental capacity to actually look into it. And I think Cuba is one of those nations where there are a lot of complicated feelings and understandings. And I think that that's intentional, that we haven't actually reckoned with the ways in which we've meddled with their government. And so again, Donald Trump is, I cannot say anything positive about him, but what I can say is he is very good at pushing a narrative that supports this idea that America is the best and that we are there to help other people, and it's not necessarily true. And so when we see things like what happened in Venezuela from the outside looking in, it's very easy to say, oh, we're doing the right thing, but there's always some ulterior motive as to why we are meddling in another country's government. And, the oil connection is no surprise to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I have a question for you because I feel like you've been watching this very closely and you have covered Cuba quite extensively. What do you think that Marco Rubio's end game is with Cuba?
I think that he wants to take out the communist regime. I think that I think the way that I read it is that they want to push the regime. They want to push the people in the regime so far that they have to capitulate to the United States, and then the United States can come in and turn it back into a capitalist government. I mean, I think that is like the dream, to take out the communist regime. And I think what makes it complicated is there's a lot of Cuban Americans who do dream of that. But I always say, and again, I'm not Cuban. I was there as a reporter. I was there truly, but I was there as an independent reporter. And I did not get the sense from the people who were talking to me that they felt oppressed or wanted the United States to come in and save them, or that they didn't, love their culture. And they had complicated feelings about it. It wasn't like they were pills for the government. And so it's just always really important.
I got complicated feelings about this country.
Right.
They're like, well, the people have complicated feelings about their country. I'm like, yeah, get in line.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those
Yeah.
complicated feelings weren't, and I wish the United States would come save me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
like,
think that that's the difference. Like, I think that there is a conversation to be had about, like, listen, there's a lot of corrupt governments. Ours is not the first, and it certainly will not be the last. But that, like, you know what it reminds me of? It's like when you were a kid and you were misbehaving out in public, and your mom is like, I'm gonna like snatch you up at home, not here in the store.
Yes.
That's kind of how it feels, where it's like, we definitely need to clean house, but I don't want somebody else coming in here and doing
Yes,
it. Like, I want it to be an internal, this is like a behind closed doors conversation. And I think you're better at, to keep the analogy going, you're better at cleaning house when it's your own family, when it's your own friends, when it's your own coworkers, versus somebody from the outside being like, I know what's best for you all, and then meddling in your personal affairs.
especially when that country has like done nefarious things before, like choke you off of oil, and like
Yes.
people are really struggling. This is a really exciting moment to be able to bring in like truly one of my heroes. We have with us today the legendary journalist Soledad O'Brien. Soledad O'Brien needs no introduction. She's an award-winning documentarian, a journalist, an author, a speaker, a philanthropist. Her most recent project includes executive producing a really brilliant documentary that we watched yesterday that is now nominated for an Oscar, called The Devil is Busy. Soledad O'Brien, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I was saying more. Don't stop with that introduction. It was the best ever. Thank you. I might make it my voicemail on my phone when people call me. How are you guys?
Good. How are you? I also saw you at a picture at Mardi Gras. You were like on a float.
So much fun. And my big worry was it was going to be like this drunken fest, which I think it is in the audience, like the people, who are the crowds. But on a float, like there's no bathroom. So nobody, like you're on a float for 5 hours.
Oh my God.
There's no drunken people on the float, like at all.
Yeah.
No.
They're like people are locked in.
Yeah. Yes. It was a lot of fun. It's really, it was lovely. It was great. And then the mayor gave me the key to the city. And then I guess you toast with champagne and you're supposed to take the glass and then smash it. And I kept saying like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Like there's people around. They're like, no, you have to smash the glass. I'm like, no,
I'm all set with the smashing.
I'm on the floor, like, smash the glass. My kids are like, smash the glass.
So did you, or did you keep it?
I had to, peer pressure. I did. And then people came by and cleaned up all the glass because I was worried, who smashes a glass when there's tens of thousands of people in the street around the glass? That would be insane. I also a little wary of throwing things at people in a crowd.
Yeah.
It goes against every sort of.
We don't need that headline.
Right. I did actually accidentally whomp a very old lady in the head, and she's like, I'm okay.
I loved it. Honestly, Soledad, you could want me in the head, and I would be.
She was kind of nice that way, but I was like, oh God, I'm so sorry.
Before we get into your documentary, which was like incredibly powerful, and we recommend everybody go see it, because we have you, and we were just talking about the situation in Cuba, and you are a daughter of a Cuban immigrant. We wanted to get your take specifically, because part of what we were talking about is like this complicated, is like some Cuban Americans are like cheering for the regime to fall. And some Cubans are like, this is an absolute humanitarian disaster. And the United States is doing what it always did in Cuba, which is strangle it out for its own political ends. How do you read this moment?
Well, all those things are true, right? I mean, I was in Cuba in June, and it was the first time actually in a long time. I usually go every 2 years to visit family and sort of do art project, tour art museums and visit galleries. And it was the first time I had really seen like kids in the street begging. That just is not how it works in Cuba, at least from the last time I'd been there. But it was also interesting because I had a chance to sit down and have great conversations with people who worked in the government, who were like, listen, people who are working in the government even have outside jobs. Remember, that wasn't allowed. I met people who purchased their own homes. Again, that's extremely unusual. So we've been seeing this. It's just been devolving for a while. And so I'm not surprise. I mean, it's the president shaping it as like make a deal is always kind of typical for him, I think. So nothing there surprises me. But, Cubans have been through a lot of very difficult times before. This is not the first administration that's, sort of thought about how they could influence or, put a finger on the scale in Cuba. And they have, made it through the 80s, obviously, and then since after that as well, multiple times. So Cubans are very resilient and very resourceful. Unfortunately, they've had to learn to be, which I think is horrific. But, again, I think it's very rare in any kind of policy conversation where a country is just like, we're here to help.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially our country. I mean, like with all due respect to us, we're not very well known.
Maybe every country, right? It's very rare that people just, I think there's often this bigger vision of what can we get out of it. And listen, I've talked to, many Cubans in Cuba who are, very conflicted. The older ones really understand what the U.S. has done, politically, historically. Cuba's a very young country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of younger people who actually, haven't experienced a lot of the stuff that happened in the 80s. And so they don't have the same mindset. And a lot of Cubans, who've had the opportunity to get out. Even though there was a fledgling entrepreneurial base that they keep trying to grow, it's really challenging.
Yeah.
It's sad because Cubans are the best, the food's the best, the people are the best, the music's the best.
Cuba, I spent some time reporting in Cuba, and I truly fell in love with the country. And it's interesting, and then we'll move on and talk about your documentary. It's interesting because I was studying HIV/AIDS and then ended up like also seeing some of like the prostitution community. And it was interesting that the actual prostitution that I saw, it wasn't the prostitution that was the stigma. It was that they needed jobs outside of the government, like that it was like that they needed to make money in this other way. So when you talk about that, it's such an interesting culture.
Yeah, there's a huge percentage of people who, even if they have a job in the government, need another job, and a large number of people who have an outside job, which, as you know, was never allowed, and certainly no one would ever admit it.
And nobody admits it. That's the taboo, is the needing of the job.
People are very, very open about they cannot live on what the government's, providing them.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts vary with Cuba, right? Every day I see it, and it's such a special place. And I guess before we move on, is there anything that Americans can and should be doing? Because this is a story that feels like it's, like down the list of things that we're paying attention to right now.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, don't you feel like there's just this fire hose of information coming at you every day? And you're like, I've got to pick these 17 things I'm going to focus on. Yeah. And then like the one fun thing that's fun to talk about so I don't lose my mind. So yeah, I think really at this moment in time, just understanding what's happening. It's so complicated. There's lots of great books about Cuba. You can just Google and ask, what's the best read? But and really, because it's very hard to really get a grip on what's been going on in Cuba over the last many, many, many years.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what's happening in this country, because we watched your incredible documentary, The Devil is Busy.
In other chaos.
Right.
In other bad news.
And, first of all, one of the questions that I had for you about this documentary is I was wondering, was this filmed like during the 2024 election? It was filmed right after the end of Roe v. Wade, right? We actually started working on it before because we knew. I mean, I knew.
Yeah.
It's funny. So often I meet somebody who didn't know. I'm like, really? Because I knew. You could tell the way Supreme Court justices were answering questions.
Called me hysterical in 2016, where I was like, "This is gonna." They were like, "No, it's
never."
And then okay.
You just watch how justices answered questions, and you're like, "Yeah, you're just." Anyway, we knew, so we raised money in order to be able to think about like, okay, what is the story? What is the doc? So once Roe v. Wade ended, we would be able to really understand the impact. We wanted to document like, what is the impact? Eventually we settled on a clinic outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And we were given really great access. Our directors, Geeta Gandabir and Crystal in Hampton, they're just really, it requires a lot of trust and a lot of being able to understand how to deal with very vulnerable people in a really challenging moment. And they're both fantastic at that as they navigated talking to, sometimes they're called clients, sometimes they're called patients, and seeing like, can we follow you through what is unfolding? Because people deserve to understand. It's interesting how many, I've done some reporting on abortion clinics issues, not a lot, but you realize the degree to which there's a lot that you never see.
Right.
Narrative wise, you would think it's 16-year-old girls flooding clinic. It's in our documentary, you see these middle-aged women, right, going in with their partner. At one point, there's a woman who is told that she can have an abortion. She's under that 6-week mark.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are turned away, some people can. And she starts to cry and laugh and cry. And it's one, again, the few times that you're trying to like capture the actual emotion of people. Often I think abortion's like, there's this or there's this.
Right.
And the reality to me seems to be, it's just complicated, right? It's just very nuanced and it's complicated. And I think our documentary really captured that through the eyes of the woman who's a security guard, who's deeply religious. And yet, right? It's a very unusual, if I were to run down the street and poll people and said, listen, I'm doing a doc on an abortion clinic and the person is really religious, 99% of the people would think, oh, you must be talking about the protesters.
Right. That's what I thought at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so again, that I think it's what makes this doc really special and interesting and complicated, because it is complicated. It is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that moment in there where one of the doctors talks about the fact that like this is going to start affecting where people go and practice. And I was really struck by the moment where they're looking at a case and they're going, oh, I think it's okay if we perform the abortion, but I'm not sure. It's a fetal abnormality. And so I think and we had Jessica Valenti on here last week, who does Abortion Every Day, who does incredible work on this. And to think of like what we have seen just since then.
Yeah.
Like what has been the reaction to people seeing those moments in the documentary of doctors saying like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to practice in that state.
Yeah. A couple of things, right? Doctors saying they're just going to leave the profession altogether or leave the community where they are. We've seen that. Of course, if you're worried about legal repercussions where you could not just lose your license, but you could go to prison, clearly. And so I think this doc really spelled out what is unfolding across the country right now. People debating exactly how terrible is the abnormality, so that if someone triple checks this, will we be in some case responsible and thought not to have done our work correctly, and so we have to protect ourselves. It's really, it's so interesting. And, we've seen that in other states as well, right? Where the patient has to get so sick or near death before the doctors say, well, now we can intervene because now you're near death, so we can help you. That's we've seen that on front page news in many states. So I think that it's not, it's exactly what it's reflective of exactly what is unfolding. It's no surprise. Why would you stay and be an OBGYN? And many schools, you can't even get the education to get the full training, the full scope of training to be an OBGYN. So I think it's really, having a chilling effect on doctors for legal reasons, for emotional reasons, right? Imagine every single day we start the doc with Tracy, who's the security guard, pointing out all the areas that she double checks to make sure there's not someone hiding in order to jump
for her. Yeah, it was scary.
Same. I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a terrifying way. And she's just very matter of fact, very matter of fact about kind of what she does. She knows the protesters by name. The protesters, serve time in prison in some cases for violent acts. So I think she's a realist about what the risks are, not just to herself, but to everybody in the clinic and the patients, the clients of the clinic as well. So yeah, it's stressful in every which way. So it's not a surprise that people would say, I just can't take it. I want to go to a place where I can practice fully and not have to debate everything to make sure that at some point down the road, someone's not second guessing my medical opinion and I could end up losing my license or going off to prison.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So, this is totally up my alley. I love, it's so important to have work about reproductive care and reproductive justice. I'm curious, have you had any conversations with people potentially across the aisle from this issue who've maybe seen the film and have a new perspective? Because I often think when I see stuff like this, I'm like, I am totally the target audience for this, but the people that are in the bubble and are really kind of being served that propaganda about late term abortions, for example, or they're thinking it's the, the runaway 16-year-old and not knowing that it is oftentimes women who already have children or are dealing with health complications. Just curious to hear more about, outside perspectives who've watched the documentary and how it's touched them.
Yeah, historically, I think me as a reporter, there's always sort of this versus this, right? It's set up as a debate. And in this doc, it's actually sort of like, this is a day in the life of this woman who runs a clinic. So it's not here's my opinion and here's what I think. This is her life. And so we have shown this doc. We were in 14 film festivals, and then we've been across the globe actually as well with it. And so in fact, the other day we did a screening in Atlanta, and this man came up to me and said, listen, I am pro-life, but that was a really good doc. So I'm not sure you change anybody's mind. I mean, I don't think it's going to happens in real life where people are like, I saw it and I've changed my mind about whatever. But I do think it allows people to actually see what unfolds. It was also interesting, the number of men who had no idea how stressful it was for women. The number of men who said, I just never even crossed my mind what women have to go through, which I thought was interesting. And we've shown the doc in some red states. I mean, some of the film festivals have been in states that are very politically diverse. And I'm like, okay, I wonder how they're going to take this. But I think because it's framed as a day in the life of this is what she goes through to run the clinic from a security standpoint. I think it's very helpful to stay out of it as a reporter. Often when you're reporting these things, it's like, here's my point of view. Here's the people I picked to interview. Here's the story as I'm telling it. This is just following someone. And I think that's very helpful in the discussion because we often don't realistically see what happens in an abortion clinic. And that's unusual.
Before you go, I was thinking about this as you were talking about protesters and as I was watching it. So Don Lemon, this is a little bit of a tangent, but Don Lemon is being prosecuted by the government right now for going into a Minneapolis protest using the FACE Act, which was made in the 90s to protect people going into abortion clinics. I wonder what your thoughts are about this law that's used to protect this one thing that you care about being used against your colleagues and another institution you care about, which is journalism. Like, it's such a bizarre.
At the end of the day, as you know, this is really much more of a legal question, right? And lawyers will take anything that they possibly can to support the case that they're going to try to bring to trial. So nothing, I mean, I feel like 2025 has been, and I'm sure 2026 as well, will be the year of like, nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me. Like every day, I'm 20 times a day. I'm like, doesn't surprise me. You guys were talking about America's Next Top Model. I'm like, doesn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me. I'm unsurprisable at every level. So I would say the same. I'm unsurprisable, right? I mean, and also that literally is what lawyers do. They're going to figure out how they can support their case and try to, using whatever they have legally in their toolbox. So again, not surprised even slightly.
I was looking at the feminist, the health clinic that is in the actual film, and we'll link to it, y'all, because you can donate there. I'm going to donate because I'm a huge fan of Tracy's now. But one of the things that I noticed is they don't just perform abortions. They do HIV testing. They do postpartum care.
Most clinics don't just do abortions. And, and as one of the women in the doc says, right, with like the conversation starts at A and then never moves on from abortion. At Planned Parenthood, also, right? Planned Parenthood.
Cervical screenings.
Right. Literally, the percentage of abortions that are performed, you would think if you asked people, again, went out on the street and asked people, they'd be like, oh, it's got to be 97% abortion. It's not at all. It's a tiny percentage. And so people don't always understand that like shutting down or getting in the way of that particular clinic also means that woman's not going to get a mammogram. That person's not going to get a pap smear. That person's not going to get free health care generally across the board. And so, I think it's interesting. It's been a way in which I think I'll just criticize journalists and journalism. Like we have really, there's a handful of people who knew that, but I don't think whenever the public doesn't understand something, I really do feel like journalists have failed. If there's this thing that has gotten out, and not just because of misinformation, but because journalists have done a poor job in reminding people that clinics are clinics, and you get rid of a clinic that provides abortion, you now have a place that women can't get a free mammogram or an affordable mammogram. So understand the implications. I think as journalists, we've kind of failed on that front, to be honest.
Well, you haven't, and everybody should go see the documentary, The Devil is Busy. It's now on HBO. It really genuinely, like, it is an intense 30-minute wild ride. It's nominated for an Oscar, deservedly so. And
Thank
Soledad
you.
O'Brien, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your
Thank you
perspective.
for having me. Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you. Happy Mardi Gras.
Thanks. That's right.
What a queen.
Wow. That's a intense, I mean, I think that was the thing that I kept thinking about is like, y'all are standing there screaming at these women and like, it's their own business why they're there, right? Like,
Mhm.
no, it's nobody's fucking business. But just because somebody is at a place like that does not mean that they're having an abortion.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is like one of the biggest failures I think that has happened in talking about women's health. And also like, the mammogram piece really strikes me because there's a lot of women are behind on getting mammograms since COVID. And like with different, things that are happening with health insurance, it's like we're taking away so much from women. How much basic healthcare are we just taking away? And if these were services that men required to get yearly, what would we be doing differently?
Well, I
Well,
mean, I think it spoke volumes that Soledad was even saying that so many men were saying to her, I had never even thought about this. And I think that kind of ties into what you're saying, Meredith. Unfortunately, the needs of women when it comes to reproductive care aren't really thought about because, yes, there are people that are getting abortions because they do not feel that they want to have a child, but there are also people who want to have children who have prayed and spent tons of money and time hoping to have a baby. And the pregnancy has to be terminated for all different sorts of reasons for the life of the mother because there are issues with the pregnancy. And I think all of this is related to the education piece. Like there are so many people that don't actually understand reproductive care. They don't understand healthcare. They don't understand women's bodies. And yet they are in a position to make decisions about our bodies. And that is a disservice to all of us.
and if on top of it, these doctors are not even going to go get the education, let alone like brave being able to like perform, that like an entire industry starts to chip away, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is like, it seems like from every angle, women's health is at stake with abortion at the nucleus, even though it's such a tiny percentage of what's actually happening there. What a bummer.
Well,
But it's a great documentary. It really is. I really felt like
it's really
the women,
really, yeah.
the women who are doing it, like they're so complicated and heroic, like you're watching, you're like, yeah, this woman at 6 a.m. in the dark is like going around and making sure that there aren't people there who are going to like kill the people coming into the clinic. And it's very powerful. Meredith, what's having a moment for you?
This is just like in that same vein, but really the center that is featured in the film, they don't really predominantly feature it, but they don't hide it. So I did find them online. They're called the Feminist Center for Reproductive Liberation. And the work that they do is so fucking badass.
Yeah, it is badass.
And what they advocate for. And so I just think I just want to plug them, and we'll link to them in the show notes. But there are amazing services that are happening there, especially around sexual health and wellness. Gender affirming care is happening there. You can get hormones there. And so I just think that they really like, one of the other things that this film does is like give this place their fucking flowers, because like these people show up every single day. I guarantee you Tracy is there. Well, I don't want to say that but like these people are there every single day showing up. And it's just like, I can sit here and say everything, but like these are the people doing the real work. So I just want to give them a shout out. They're my moment. Francesca, what's having a moment for you?
Ooh, What's having a moment for me? Well, I started a new job, Meredith. I don't know if I told you about this. I'm working as a consultant at a social media marketing firm. So I've got my big
Ooh.
girl job. And the moment that I'm really having is like stepping into my power and being okay with admitting I don't know things at times. I think it can be, as somebody who really prides themselves on being well read and being an authority in my field, it has been kind of humbling to start over at a new place and realize there are things I don't know. But really kind of owning that as a superpower, that asking questions does not mean that you are not deserving. Sometimes a question can be exactly what's needed to help advance a conversation or reanalyze how something's being done. And so, yeah, my moment right now is just about kind of giving myself credit. Like I'm here because somebody wanted me to be here,
Yes.
and really just believing that rather than letting imposter syndrome take the wheel.
Yeah, I think like every time that I've started a new job since I was in high school, I remember I had like my first like part-time job, then I got a second part-time job. And I remember the first day at the second part-time job, I was like, I had this feeling of why did I ever leave the first job? I knew how to do everything. Now I don't know how to do anything. And like I've had a lot of stupid thoughts in my life. I had an underdeveloped frontal lobe then. I was probably 15 and a half. And I had this moment of I think you're going to feel this way every time you start something new.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
like, I have had that moment in every job where I have to go, yeah, it would have been safer to stay where you were, but like, you'll have a moment where you know what you're talking about or you know what you're doing. And it
Mhm.
is really powerful. And I think as women also too, women in like positions of leadership, et cetera, we're taught not to have that. Like, did you see the interview with Anna Wintour and Chloe
Yes.
Malley?
Oh,
Yes.
no, I didn't.
Oh, it was so odd. Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
Francesca, it kinda reminds me a little bit of what you're talking about. Like, I have my
Mm.
thoughts on the Chloe pick, but, like, basically, Chloe is, like, kinda like, "If I had more money, this is what I do, and this is how I change it, and this is what's not working," and blah, 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 and Anna Wintour's like, "Everything's fine here."
Yeah, she's like, "You're wrong." She's like, "Touch that
Mm.
child."
So, anyway, I think we'll have to have you back to discuss it because there's a real the power dynamic, and then at
I
one
know.
point, they're
I had
like,
that thought too.
"When do you
Yeah.
ever get nervous, Chloe?" And she was like, "Oh, I got nervous right before this interview," and Anna's like, "I've never been nervous," and I'm just
I've
like,
never been nervous in
"Oh."
my life. And it's like, "Is
Oh,
that
I hate
why
it.
you wear your sunglasses everywhere? I think you might be nervous under those sunglasses, babe.
Yeah.
I think you might be.
Yeah.
Admit
So
it."
anyway, I love that. I think y'all take note. Wise words as always from Francesca Ramsey.
Thank
Rebecca,
you.
what's having a moment for you?
Okay, this is like sort of, I'm going to say that Virginia Giuffre is having a moment for me. The survivor of Epstein who came out and like really was sort of like the original leading voice of these survivors. And she had a quote in her book that said, "Growing up female, there's danger everywhere." And the reason this is having a moment for me is I found out this week that a private club in Manhattan that I worked at when I was 20 turns out was like an Epstein hub.
Oh,
And
wow.
from the moment I heard the Epstein story, you know, like really coming to light in like 2018, 2019, I was like, I wonder if there was involvement at this club. Like I could feel it. And then to see it come to light and be like, yeah, it was on the periphery of everything of my life. And like I was 20, I was probably too old for them and like probably just like out of safe range. But the reason why it struck me so much, and especially as we were talking about America's Next Top Model, is like I was so vulnerable. If chic Ghislaine Maxwell had come to me in that club and said, "You're so beautiful and so smart, and I just want to help you in your career, and I can introduce you to this person, this person, and this person," I would have followed her to the ends of the earth. And like just as a reminder of like how close we all are to this vulnerable place, especially as girls and women, and to like do everything we can to make sure that 19, 20-year-olds are now not in that position. Like that's kind of what I felt watching the America's Next Top Model doc and doing this, is like just how vulnerable we are. And when Virginia Giuffre said, "If you grow up female, there is danger everywhere," like there really is. and hopefully less and less as we become more and more powerful in the next generation. But I can't stop thinking about how indeed close I was to this net of people and how vulnerable I would have been to it had they sought me out, and they were everywhere. So I don't know if that's a moment exactly, but it is what's on my mind.
I mean, I think the empathy part of it really ties into the conversation we were having about Top Model. And I think something that I learned when I was working on my show Decoded is we did an episode about victim blaming, and oftentimes, not to excuse people's decision to victim blame, but it comes from a place of fear where
Yes.
it feels easier to say, well, they did those things wrong and that would never happen to me. And the reality is, it is much easier to finger wag and say what you would have done differently because we know the outcome of the situation
100%.
versus if we were in the situation ourselves. And it sounds like that's kind of the moment that you're connecting there, where you're like, oh my God, it's like the sliding doors moment.
It was
Like,
it was exactly. That's
if
exactly.
one thing had been different, who knows, where you could have ended up. And I think more people need to be open to having that realization. And it's frustrating that too often people can't make that connection until it happens to a family member or
Right.
somebody that they
Or
work
to
with or
them.
someone, or to them. Exactly.
Right.
And that is something we keep seeing over and over again, where suddenly people are saying, oh, this is what I voted for, but now that it's affecting me, I'm having second thoughts.
That's right.
And so the fact that survivors have been so bold enough to share their stories when, it opens them up to so much criticism and harassment
And danger. Like
and
true
danger. Yeah, they're doing it for the good of all of us. And I
Yes.
hope that that's what people take away from it.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I want to just shout out somebody in the comments who wrote in, I've never not been nervous any day of my life. And
On that note, good for you.
relate to that. Everybody, two things really quickly. We will be back on Friday, obviously, as we always are. And then next Tuesday, we're so excited. We just found this out. We are going to be partnering with the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, to host their West Coast watch party of the State of the Union next Tuesday, February 24th. At 6 p.m. PST, 9 p.m. EST. So we'll be putting out more about that, but we'll have some special guests come hang out with us. We'll watch the State of the Union. We'll do a little fact checking. We'll do a little, we'll have some laughs. We'll have some conversations. It'll be really fun. And we're really honored to do that. And thank you so much. Francesca, remind our friends where they can find you.
I have a podcast that's out every Wednesday on YouTube called Let Me Fix It. You can find us at youtube.com/@fixitpod.
Right.
We
Thank
love
you
it.
guys. We'll see you guys on Friday, and no daytime show next Tuesday. Producer Rihanna wants me to tell you guys because we're going to do the nighttime show, and that would be, it's already an ambitious undertaking. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Come
you,
back soon.
Princess.